That's awesome, man. Yeah, before we go down the rabbit hole on, the different platforms and all that and what you have going to help people do that and to, I went through and started deleting after our conversation yesterday. I was like, I went through and started deleting apps off my phone yesterday. So I was like, all right. But before we get down that point, something you said about when you were growing up in Chicago and you said about your dad that your dad was always seeking truth and love. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so there are those in life who, maybe they stumble upon some kind of religion or faith or something, and they just stick to it, and they're not open to other conversations. They're not open to hearing other ways of thinking or thought processes or whatever. They're just very closed-minded, and for whatever reason. Um, my father, thankfully, he was going through a time during my early teenage years where he was exploring his faith. He was raised Catholic. He's actually now a traditional Catholic, so he's gone back to being a traditional Catholic. But he was going to Jews for Jesus meetings. He was going to synagogue. He was going to, the Southern Baptist churches in Chicago. I vividly remember, I think being 13 years old, I have a twin sister, and he brought us to a church downtown in the south side of Chicago, where we were there for like 5 hours and service was still going on and people were jumping around in the aisleways. And we were like, what, Dad, we need to go. We need to leave. We were like in tears. We were like, come on, this is insane, Dad. We need to go. So he was exploring all of this. And so we had a very interesting perspective of looking at all these different denominations and whatnot. But he's constantly seeking truth. So he's trying to understand what are the systems that exist around us. And by following the money, right, you start to learn what's influencing all these different systems. So whether it's education or it's our government or it's the financial systems, you name it, right? All these different systems, it's healthcare, right? Trying to understand how they operate, how they work with a systems theory mindset, you can start to put the puzzle pieces together and understand why things are the way they are. So seeking truth is one thing, but seeking truth in love, for me, it's very much of a faith-based Christian type of centered approach to it, though it doesn't have to be Christian. But that's what Jesus Christ did preach, was seek truth in love. And love is the key, because if you can approach a conversation or approach someone with love in your heart and view them as a brother or a sister, um, you can have a totally different conversation. And it took me a while in my life to really learn that. In that if I want people to listen to me and hear me, I need to show empathy, and I need to actually not just fake it, right? I need to be empathetic. I need to actually listen and understand where someone is coming from and build a personal relationship with that person so that I can truly learn from that person and that they hopefully in turn could learn from me. So that's really what I meant by that.
Dude, I that totally resonates with me. And we talked a little bit about the show, before the show about it. I think empathy is so, and I used to like have zero empathy in my body, right? Like I was like, there wasn't an empathetic bone in my body. I was like, you know what? You screwed up, whatever. You believe this, you're a jerk kind of thing. And it was going through my, working on my head with the post-traumatic stress that I started really diving into the empathy stuff. Like, why do people believe the way they do? Why do, what causes them to be the way they are? And, once I trace that back into people, go back into their past, it helps you to understand, oh, this is why they believe. And I may not agree with why they believe something, but it really helps you to get that understanding of, okay, here's their baseline and then here's mine, and where do we find that commonality and stuff. So now I'm a huge believer in empathy. I think it gets discounted way too much. I think it's a really powerful thing, because once you're empathetic with others, you can be empathetic with yourself. So that way, you're like, we all screw up, but then you could find out your why and find out what's going on. This is obviously is a preparedness podcast, and you can find out why do you prepare the way you do? Why do you feel about the future the way you believe about the future? That kind of stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's huge.
Well, even with preparedness, right? So I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm a seed stage investor in a lot of different companies. And seed stage is very early stage. It's like, hey, dude's got an idea or woman's got an idea. and they want to take this to the next level. And I've always told people, look, I'm a different type of investor and advisor. I advise you as a human, as an individual through this process. Yes, I've got connections in business, and yes, I can help you, direct you in the right path. But really, what I'm concerned about is your own mental health.
Yeah.
Because living in Silicon Valley and working in Silicon Valley, I can count on two hands the number of people I know who have committed suicide, entrepreneurs who've committed suicide because they did not take their own mental health seriously. And whether it was divorce or addiction, drugs, alcohol, you name it, working themselves to death, they were not aware that those things were so critically important in their life. So when it comes to living, uh, and you briefly mentioned forgiveness, forgiving yourself, that is absolutely critical, right? I haven't gone through all the stages of addiction. I know people in my life who have, very close people in my life who have, and I've read through the books with them. But I think we're all addicted to some things, whether we admit it or not. I think by the end of this podcast, everyone's going to be able to say, yes, I am addicted to this thing right here that I carry around with me all the time. And the thought of having to leave it away from me for a week or two makes me anxious, right? I think we're all addicted to some degree, but not only being able to forgive other people, but being able to forgive yourself is absolutely critical. Because if I'm going to go into battle, I want to go into battle with people that I know are at least somewhat emotionally stable so that when things get crazy, they don't go crazy, right? And I've
Yeah.
been through enough startups and had enough people around me during those experiences where if you're not working with people that are of sound mind and heart, things get crazy very fast. And if you're dealing with narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths who have no ability to empathize, right? Which is the vast majority of Silicon Valley. And I would say the startup world and politicians as well, because there's very similar personalities. Things go south very, very quickly. And when we're idolizing individuals who may have been successful, but they are truly unempathetic psychopaths, sociopaths, what kind of a culture does that lead to? And does that create around those organizations and those people that are looking to the Steve Jobs or the Bill Gates or these people who are truly psychopaths? When you really dig into it and you talk to the people that work with them, they have very, very little ability to empathize with anything going on around them. So I just went on a long rant there, but I want to continue on it actually, because it's all about energy and frequency. I believe it's all about energy and frequency. So it's about what is the most highest frequency emotions that we can experience. Well, it's forgiveness, love, gratitude, and appreciation. So if we want to create a better world around us, and we want to, not just be preppers out of fear, right? We want to prep out of a higher frequency, then I think it changes our approach to everything that we're doing.
Unpack the energy and frequency things. I'm a very I monitor it's part of how I get through the day now. I monitor my body constantly for energy, right? Like, am I agitated, whatever? Because as soon as my brain starts going down the rabbit hole on being agitated or depressed or whatever it is, you're getting on the log ride at Disneyland and you're gone, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going for the ride. So I'm very conscious of like, oh, do I feel anxious right now? Why am I feeling anxious? Unpack it and then work to pull myself out of that. What do you unpack the energy and frequency thing a bit?
Yeah. So when we are in low frequency states of fear, anger, anxiety, any of these things, our brain chemistry changes and our ability to think logically, our ability to think reasonably, our ability to look into and keep in mind the future state of where we want to go diminishes. Our memory starts to go away, right? So if you think about why and how we've gotten into the position that we're in today as a society, a lot of it is because they've been pushing low frequency constantly on us and everything has frequency.
Mhm.
Every organ in our bodies themselves, everything around us emits a frequency. So when you really dig into the science of that, it's fascinating. right? So why is it that certain foods are known to be healthy for certain organs and parts of our body, right? Or certain essential oils are supposed to known to be good in healing certain parts of our bodies. Well, it's because the frequency of that food or the frequency of that essential oil is the same frequency as a healthy heart or liver or kidneys or whatever it might be, gallbladder or pancreas or whatever it is. So those frequencies that we're bringing into our body help to heal those things. And it's the same with our mental state. When we're in a state of gratitude and appreciation, we open ourselves up to experiences that I think everybody wants. We all want to be loved and we want to be appreciated. The way to receive those things is to push those things out, right? It's the law of attraction. And that's where you read through, for me, I read through scripture on a regular basis because it constantly comes back to these dynamics of loving other people as yourself, right? People say, oh, yeah, I get that. Do you really get that? Do you really understand that? So for me, that's what I mean by frequency. Everything is frequency and everything is energy.